Okay, so welcome to lesson 2 of breathing basics. Last week in lesson 1, you can watch that back either on Instagram Live or on YouTube. We looked at changing our awareness and just becoming more aware of how we're breathing. And today in lesson 2 of breathing basics, we're going to be looking at how we can utilize using the diaphragm. Our diaphragm is our number 1 breathing muscle and is situated at the bottom of the rib cage. And what we're looking to utilize is that on an inhale, that is drawing downwards, and that is what's creating more space within the thorax, and that extra space reduces the pressure within the thorax, and that helps pull air in. So rather than lifting the rib cage from the upper chest, which can be linked to mouth breathing, we're breathing from deeper down. So the diaphragm is going to move down 1 or 2 centimeters on an inhalation, and that's going to help pull air in to the body the most efficient and effective way. It's a deeper breath because it's starting from down here, and rather than it being a shallow upper chest movement that is often linked to mouth breathing and more of our sort of fight or flight stress response. So breathing from lower down can be a lot more calming. The diaphragm is our number 1 breathing muscle, so we want to be using it. It creates intra-abdominal pressure, which helps stabilize the spine. It helps to stimulate the vagus nerve as well. There's so much there's sort of proof that we want to be using the diaphragm as our number 1 breathing muscle. The problem is, depending on what your breathing habits have been like for a very long time, if you're anything like me, a couple of years ago when I started to explore this, I was an upper chest breather. And even when I changed to switching to breathe through my nose, which is linked to utilizing the diaphragm, my habits were still to lift the upper chest and lift the rib cage and do shallow breathing. Like, I can still breathe shallowly when I'm breathing through my nose. We need to be able to connect to our diaphragm. Now, the problem is, and I want to give you the tools to be able to change this, is if I asked you to connect to or contract or tense your diaphragm, you might not quite know how to, even though you know it's somewhere down there underneath those ribs somewhere, you might not know how to do that. Whereas if I said tense your bicep and squeeze that bicep, you know how to do that because your brain has a connection to that muscle, that mind muscle connection you have. And just as a movement pattern of like flexing at the elbow to create your bicep flex, just as that is a movement pattern, so is breathing. It's a movement pattern. Your diaphragm is a muscle, and we need to be able to connect to it. So when I remember trying to go, right, so we need to breathe through the diaphragm. We need to use the diaphragm as our breathing muscle. Great. How do I know if I'm doing it right? How do I know what that feels like? So we're going to do a blocked inhalation now, where you're going to find where your diaphragm is going to sit. So if you feel for your 2 bottom lower ribs, the diaphragm is going to sort of sit in an arch underneath or within those bottom ribs. So if you find where those bottom ribs are, it's going to connect to your sternum. I want you to put your hand underneath, one of your hands underneath your sternum, in between where those 2 bottom ribs are. You're going to feel your diaphragm move underneath your hand. And what we're going to do is a blocked inhalation, meaning you're going to try and breathe in whilst you're holding your nose and keeping your mouth closed. So we do a normal breath in, a normal breath out, we pinch the nose, and then we're going to try and take a long breath in. You're going to feel something, your diaphragm, move underneath your hand. So normal breath in, normal breath out. Hopefully you can see that. There's a little bit of movement happening underneath my hand. Hopefully you're feeling it yourself. Now I want you to do it again, and I want you to try and make it as long and as a strong contraction as possible to really feel what that is like. So really try to connect to it. It might have been a little bit weak of a connection to start with, but if you can try to really hone in on it and make a mental note of how that felt, because we're going to try and use that in a second. So hand underneath where your ribs are, normal breath in, normal breath out, pinch the nose and try and breathe in. Go again, a long, strong breath in. Feel that diaphragm move down and feel it pushing out and flattening out. One more. So you know what that feels like. Okay, hopefully you can feel that. Let me know in the comments if you haven't done already. So if you can feel your diaphragm, give me a thumbs up in the comments or let us know. And don't be afraid or don't be worried that if it was feeling quite difficult to get to, it might just be that you need to just build and practice this. But what I want us to then do is, because for a long time you might have been breathing from that upper chest, And all of a sudden, just because we do one drill doesn't mean your diaphragm's just going to kick in straight away. Breathing in and out through the nose is going to help with connecting to that diaphragm. But this also, that blocked inhalation is a great drill to practice. So once we've done that, now I want you to try to create the same feeling. You know, have one hand underneath the stomach where we just were, but rather than actually hold and do a blocked inhalation, I want you to imagine you're going to do that blocked inhalation. And as you take that breath in, feel that hand move, feel the diaphragm move down, and notice the air enters through the nose. Yeah, the diaphragm is moving down. That's opening up space, reduces pressure on the inside compared to the outside, and then air comes in. So we don't have to try and pull and force air in. Air is being pulled in from the diaphragm. And the fact that the diaphragm is down here, deep compared to shallow up here, then we're creating the depth of the breath. We're filling all of the lungs, or at least filling the lungs, even with lighter breaths. We're filling the lungs from the bottom up. So I'm imagining I'm going to do a blocked inhalation. The diaphragm moves down, and notice air coming in. For some reason, I'm looking up there now. That's my concentration eyes like go up there. And then just start to get into a rhythm with that. Each inhale, you feel that bottom hand, you feel something underneath your diaphragm moving down and out. And then the breathing just nice and relaxed on the way out. But each breath in, you're thinking and imagining you're doing that blocked inhalation. So you're just teaching yourself this new movement pattern. If you feel any tension around the shoulders or neck, what I want you to do is try and just roll them out and shake them out. There's no reason for the neck, the chest, the shoulders to get involved in our breathing at rest. I want you to feel only that bottom hand moving. And every time, just making that connection to that muscle. It might be weak to start with, but we just have to practice it, just like we practice any movement pattern. Good. Then we're going to try in a few different positions. So that's in terms of kneeling or sitting. Coming down and lying on our back can be a way to just a different position. For some people, this is they find it easier to feel the diaphragm in this position lying down. And so I want you to rest your head on the floor, and then you can put your hand, just want you to rest your elbows on the floor and just rest your fingertips just on the outside of where those ribs are. And they might meet in the middle, but just resting on there so that when you do breathe in, you'll feel your diaphragm moving down and moving out against them. And the diaphragm will just push on your fingertips a little bit. So they're just really softly resting on there. And then exactly the same thing, but now you're lying down. If you want to, it can be good in this new position, just because it's obviously now a horizontal. Just get used to it, and then do a blocked inhalation. So normal breath in, normal breath out. Pinch the nose. Try to breathe in strongly and deeply. You'll really feel your stomach move. But remember, it's not your tummy. We're not belly breathing. It is your diaphragm underneath those ribs that you'll feel moving downwards and outwards. So make that connection now in this new position. And then with each in-breath, imagine that you're doing that blocked inhalation. Feel the diaphragm move down and out. Nice relaxed breaths at a pace that's comfortable for you. We're working on that connection and sort of rewiring that mind-muscle connection to the diaphragm. Should be nice and relaxing, lying down as well. Each inhale, you're imagining you're doing a blocked inhalation. I need you to feel that diaphragm, not with your fingers, but I want you to internally feel that diaphragm move down and out. And then just notice how air gets pulled in. You're not having to pull it in. The diaphragm moving down is what's pulling that air in. So it's great for slowing our breathing down. After all, the diaphragm is our number one breathing muscle. So it's important that we give him the chance to work as the number one breathing muscle. We have these secondary breathing muscles that can help to, our pecs and our chest and our neck muscles. And the traps, like they can help to lift the rib cage up, but that isn't how they're not like the primary way that we want to be breathing. It's more related to our stress response, our sympathetic tone. And it's only really necessary when we're trying to get large volumes of air in, once we do it, like exercising at an intensity where we can't maintain nasal breathing. So it's important to practice. We did two positions there: seated, or I was kneeling, so kneeling or seated, and then lying, and then doing the same thing but standing, doing the same thing but actually get used to what is it like when I'm moving. So walking, but being able to feel and connect into your diaphragm, because as soon as you start walking, there's a lot of muscle contractions going on to stabilize around your midsection, your hips, as we're walking, that just happen automatically. And you might start initially to then be able to, you'll lose that feeling of getting the diaphragm going. So it's practicing using your diaphragm as your number one breathing muscle in a controlled manner, so that when you go into like exercise and not being able to consciously think about it, you've ingrained that habit of using the diaphragm. It's moving down and it's moving out, rather than lifting the ribs up from the upper chest. Utilizing nasal breathing in and out whenever you can is helpful to connect to the diaphragm. But until you teach yourself and retrain yourself to use the diaphragm as your number one breathing muscle, we will often revert to old habits. And that was something I experienced a lot myself. So I'm keen to help people understand what it feels like. You do that blocked inhalation, you can definitely feel that contraction. And so that gives you the chance to just like mentally understand what that feels like, connect into it, and then start to train that breathing muscle, the diaphragm, as he wants to be used. It's designed as our number one breathing muscle. The body, like it wants you to use it. So if you give it the time and a bit of practice, and the environment to be able to use it, he's going to love it, and eventually it will turn into that normal habit, and you'll lose all that tension around the neck and the chest, and it will come from the diaphragm. And then the challenge then after that is like when I'm starting to take it into exercise, when the metabolic demand increases, if you're into training and running and that sort of stuff, then you'll notice that it becomes more demanding. That's why it's great to practice it in a controlled fashion when we're at rest, and do that in a couple of simple positions like seated or lying down, and then also like just build up. So can you do that same thing when you're walking? Great to connect in to that diaphragm. And I hope that helps. If you haven't watched lesson 1, that was about awareness. It'd be a really good one to watch before this one, or as well as this one. And then I'm just going to, this series is going to carry on. We're going to look at future stuff in the lessons of just building up these basics of breathing, so that you can all get a better understanding of those basic principles to help you breathe better, breathe more efficiently, help improve the way you feel, the way you move, and how you perform by improving how we breathe. So I hope that's been helpful, and a nice little way to start the day. You can start to be a little bit more mindful, a little bit aware of using that diaphragm through the rest of the day and the rest of your life. So hopefully that's been useful. If you have any questions for me, put them in the comments. If these are all going to be up on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed to my new YouTube channel, head over to YouTube. It's just my name, David Jackson. Appreciate a subscription. We just went over 100 subs, yeah. So thanks for that. Thanks to everyone that has subscribed and watched the videos. And yeah, if you've got any questions, hit me up in the comments. And otherwise, if you're watching on Instagram, then hit me. If you've got any questions for me, you can always send a direct message. And finally, if there are, I'm doing like 2 little online groups, 6 to 8 people, that runs over 3 weeks. If you're interested in them, the current groups are obviously full and running. We're in week 2, but in April there'll be 2 new groups hopefully. And if you're interested in that, then send me a direct message on Instagram or email me directly, davidjacksonfitness@gmail.com. And the details for that are in the description. My email is in the description of this YouTube video. So other than that, breathe well, stay safe, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.